I know. I'm gonna pull out Shakespeare. I just happened to read Shakespeare in the month of January. Let's be fair. If I had run 50 marathons in 50 days, you better believe I would be writing a book about it. The whining, the pacing, all the main characters are reactionary and whiny. This sounds really harsh, because it is. Well, hello there. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Ashley. Today I'm going to be doing my January 2021 wrap-up. I am almost used to saying 2021. That's a lie. Just a lie. I'm not used to it yet. Okay, so the first book that I read, ta-da! 50 and 50. I'm not exactly sure how you pronounce the title of this book, just that it has 50 twice on the cover. 50 squared. So we're gonna go with 50 and 50, and if that's not the title, yeah. So this is the true story of Dean Karnazes, who ran 50 marathons in 50 days in the United States. So he ran a different marathon every day in one of the United States. Yes, that's what I want to say. So the subtitle of this book and the preface to the book make this book sound as if it's all about how you too can choose to be a super endurance runner. And honestly, I felt like this book was a little bit braggy. I mean, but let's be fair. If I had run 50 marathons in 50 days, you better believe I would be writing a book about it and bragging about it to everyone I met ever. So I 100% am totally fine with the fact that he wants to write a book and brag about it. But at the same time, I didn't necessarily enjoy reading about all of the braggy moments, because, I don't know, it just came off as really cocky to me, which it should. Like, it's totally his right. I don't know. I have mixed feelings about this. Overall, I gave this book a 2 because I didn't hate reading it. I also didn't love reading it. I liked it enough. I probably will never read it again. It did change my habits in the sense that the way he describes running, he is so in love with the act of running. Like, he does everything he can to do more of that activity. And I loved that, which is, like, that's something that I would like to incorporate more in my life, is this thrill and love of running. So I have changed my own habits to include running more. Which is great. Like, I love that I read a book that changed something that I do outside of that. But that's probably the only thing I took from this book, was a desire to want to run more and to enjoy the process of running more. Some of the issues I had with this book is that he gave a lot of nutritional advice. Not a qualified dietitian, and he's not a doctor, and so part of me is like, I'm really glad that those things work for you, but I also don't know that I would publish a book talking about all the great things that work for you on running and give that as advice on how someone else can be a super endurance runner, achiever, blah blah blah, just like you. And I totally understand why, because things work for him, he feels like they would automatically work for everybody, but that's not how genetics works. So I don't know. I've already given away the book. I had a physical copy of it, and I already gave it away to the free library. So this is a weird book because it changed my habits, but also I won't read it again. So that's a weird mix of how things work. Book number 2, Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine by Gail Honeyman. This is written, it takes place in the United Kingdom, and I'm not sure about where all of the accents are, so I can't tell you where in the United Kingdom it takes place. I am pretty sure it's Britain, but I don't know for positive. This book follows Eleanor Oliphant, who is a 30-year-old secretary. She grew up in a social care system, and she didn't have any friends or any family. She does keep in contact once a week with her mother, who is in the prison system, so it's not really a great relationship there. And then Eleanor meets the love of her life, who is a rising musician, and he doesn't know that she exists. And Eleanor is determined to gain more social skills that she needs to woo this musician. So she starts to practice talking to people and doing things that are outside of her norm, and she meets Raymond, the new IT guy, and she meets Sammy, an elderly gentleman with heart problems, and they start to help her pick apart some of the things that aren't necessarily working from her past. And it's not a romance novel, which I really enjoyed. I liked that the emphasis of this was not on the romance. This is mostly a story of Eleanor realizing how much she needs social interaction and love and a job that is fulfilling, and how much she doesn't have that. And that realization destroys her. Trigger warnings for this novel. There is a lot of trigger warnings for depression, for suicidal ideation, and a suicide attempt. This novel was quite hard for me to read. I enjoyed it. I loved the writing style. I loved Eleanor Oliphant as a character. And this absolutely would have been a 5-star read for me if the ending had been different. I also have issues with this novel just because of its treatment of mental health. I feel like the entire novel leading up to the climax was so poignant and so lovely. It showed how trapped Eleanor is inside of her own head, and how much she truly cannot see how she's coming across to people, and she doesn't know how to fix that. And I feel like it was a really good display of some of the things that people with mental health do struggle with. But it's also not the only depiction of how people struggle with depression, because there are a lot of people who struggle with depression who don't have problems with social skills. They interact with people just fine. Not everybody is Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh who struggles with depression. So I felt like it definitely played into the stereotype of Eeyore. And like there are definitely people who struggle with depression in that way, but that's not the only way that people struggle with depression. And I didn't like that it just played into that stereotype. Very little attention is given to Eleanor after she goes to therapy. Therapy does not fix mental health problems. Just because you go to therapy does not mean that your mental health problems are fixed. And it's the same with medication. Just because you start medication does not mean that your problems with mental health are all of a sudden cured and solved. Because you don't fix mental health problems, you manage symptoms. And this book plays into the stereotype that if you start therapy and confront a couple inner demons, and you will just magically be cured after that. When in reality, people struggle with mental health needs, and they need support from friendship long after therapy and medication have started. It's a support system that needs to be in place for the entirety of their lives. I gave this book a 3.75 stars. The writing was beautiful, and I definitely would read something by this author again. Book number 3, The Slippery Slope. This is book 10 in the series of unfortunate events. This series follows Violet, Claus, and Sunny Baudelaire as they attempt to stay out of the grips of Count Olaf. He is a distant relative who wants their enormous fortune. This book does not take itself too seriously. There was a lot of melodrama that I laughed out loud at. One of my favorite lines that I think I might have ever read in a book is somebody gets a piece of bread and complains that their toast is raw. And I loved that. I was laughing out loud at a lot of things in this book. The same with a lot of the series of unfortunate events. I laugh a lot at a lot of things that happen there. This was just a fun, lazy read, and I give it 4 stars. I absolutely plan to read this series again with my daughter. Next, Betrothed by Kira Cass. This book was a huge letdown for me. Oh my goodness. And part of that was my expectations going into it. I will be fair with that. I was expecting this novel's plot to revolve around the tension between a relationship between a girl who is betrothed to a king against her will, and she's falling in love with somebody else and trying to decide what to do about that. And I guess in very loose terms, you could just say that that's what happened. But this novel was much more focused on going through a series of plot points, and there was very little emphasis given to the relationships here. I felt like the selection, also by the same author, was consumed and full of all of the relationship and the drama that comes with relationships, and I was looking for something more along those lines, and that's not what was going on here. This is the novel of a girl who meets a king and enjoys flirting with him, and then meets another boy and falls in love with him because he's gorgeous. Like, that's the reason she falls in love with him, is because he's beautiful. She talks with him 4 times before the king proposes, and then she's like, you know what? No, and she runs away with the other boy. And then this all takes place, this is the halfway point of the novel. And she gets married to this boy, and the night of their wedding, when they're all still at the reception, the secret police show up and murder everyone except her and her mother-in-law and her sister-in-law. And then they go back to their homeland together. And this novel moves so quickly that the romances didn't have time to be believable or impactful. And I 100% don't believe that the boy she married is dead, because we never found a body. And I feel like this is going to pull up the resurrection trope in the next book, because the sequel is set to come out in July. And I felt like the plot was just trying to rush to make her a widow so that you would feel the drama of that and you would feel it all. I don't know. This book was a lot more like The Glittering Court by Rochelle Mead, which is fine. I didn't particularly enjoy that either. I feel like there was much more emphasis given on moving through a series of plot points than there were on the relationships, which is not necessarily the fault of the novel, right? Like that's me wanting certain things out of the novel, and I am much more willing to forgive a book if it has really good character and really good character development, and the plot sucks, than I am if the character development and the character growth is garbage, but the plot is really good. And I feel like the plot was really good and interesting, but the character growth was not. This is not my type of romance, and I probably will not pick up the sequel because I feel like it was just needlessly dramatic. I'm not going to say I'm not going to pick up the sequel, because if I'm bored and I don't have anything else to listen to, I probably would read it, but that would be the only circumstances under which I would read it. This sounds really harsh, because it is. But if you like The Glittering Court by Rochelle Mead, you probably would really like this novel. This is a 2 for me. And I won't be rereading this, I don't think. Next, we have Intuitive Eating by Elsie Risch and Evelyn Triboulet. So this is a self-help book. It's more than a self-help book, though. It's written by 2 qualified dietitians, so it's a self-help book with like a licensed person behind it. It covers the 10 principles of intuitive eating, which is a lifestyle manner of eating that's much more true to the way you come into the world eating. This introduced me to 1,000 new concepts and ideas and terms like diet culture, fat phobia, intuitive movement, like exercise, intuitive exercise, questions about what healthy actually means and looks like, and the recognition that even though our doctors are amazing and they go through tons and tons of medical school to learn everything they do, that doesn't mean that our medical system is perfect or that it doesn't have flaws. Which is something that I had never given any thought or consideration to. I read this book over the course of 6 months. I started this last August. And I read it very slowly because I was trying to apply the principles that I was learning about in this book. It has changed my relationship with food, in the idea that like I didn't know I had a relationship with food. So if you're curious about this topic, I will link a couple YouTube videos from dietitians on the subject of intuitive eating. I am not a qualified dietitian, so I'm not going to comment on that. But I did really enjoy this book, and it's a rejection of diets. That is a good summary for this book. The next book I read is Twelfth Night. I know, I'm gonna pull out Shakespeare. I just happened to read Shakespeare in the month of January. No, that's not what happened. I subscribed to Coursera, which is a free app that allows you to audit college classes, and they announced that they were holding a class on Twelfth Night by Shakespeare. And I was like, I am there. I have tried to study Shakespeare on my own, and I have sucked at it. I have read all of Shakespeare's plays before, and I can't tell you anything about them because I didn't understand them. And I was like, this is my chance. I'm going to read this, and we're going to go through the class, and it's going to be great. So I'll put the links for the class down below. It is active as of now, January 2021. Is that, yeah, I was sitting there, I was like, what else do I need to add to that date? Nothing. January 2021, links down below. So because I was interested in this course, I was like, okay, we're going to pick up Twelfth Night. The course is based on you read the play once, you watch a movie adaptation, and then the next 4 weeks are spent digging deeper into all of the acts. So because this happened in the middle of January, I have read the play and I have watched the movie. And let me tell you, I've never watched any adaptation of Shakespeare's plays before. I'll link the YouTube video down below because I thought it was hysterical. So if you don't know anything about the story of Twelfth Night, this follows Viola, who is shipwrecked in the mysterious land of Illyria. She thinks her twin brother Sebastian has drowned, and she's all on her own trying to make her way in the world. She dresses up as a man and hires herself out to court and hires herself as a eunuch to Count Orsino. Orsino uses her to go woo the woman of his choice, the Lady Olivia. The problem is that Viola is in love with Orsino, and he's sending her to try and woo someone when she would so rather be the one being wooed. This is a case of mistaken identity, because very quickly we learn that Sebastian, her brother, is not dead, and he starts walking through town, and the twins look identical. And so people think they're talking to Viola, and they're not. It's lovely. It's beautiful. I'm still working through the course. This will be on my TBR for the month of February as well, because I'm still reading through it again. Right now, this is a 3.5 4-star read for me, and I expect it to be a 5-star once I have gone through the analysis and why things are working the way they're working in Shakespeare. I just have totally enjoyed this. I laugh out loud at this, and I've never done that before, so this was a huge success for me. The last book that I finished is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. This book started out as a 5-star for me, and then probably settled into like a 3.5, a 3-star read. This book follows Addie LaRue, who makes a deal with the devil that she will be able to live forever, or until she's tired of living. But in order for her to make that deal, the devil takes away everybody's ability to remember her. So the second somebody puts a door between her, or they sleep, they forget who she is. So her family forgets her, everybody she meets forgets her, and this is the story of her living for 300 years to try and survive that. Which, like, I love that. It's such an interesting plot line. And then one day she meets Henry, who is a bookshop owner, and Henry remembers her after she attempts to steal a book from his bookshop. And like, the first half of the book was quite lovely. This is a long book. This is 15 hours of audio, so it's about 500 plus pages. And definitely after the 1/2 mark, 2/3 mark, it felt like it was dragging. I feel like there were so many other things that could be explored in this novel that just didn't get explored. And I didn't really like that. I will say trigger warnings for suicidal ideation and suicide attempt in this novel. So heads up for that. It just didn't wrap up the way it could have. I felt like it wasn't fully fleshed out, and there's a couple commentaries that I've listened to that I'll link down below that I thought were really interesting on this novel. I would probably read it again, but not for a while. Overall, I would give this a 3 stars, 3.5 maybe. I don't know. And then finally, the only book that I DNF'd this month, Inkspell by Cornelia Funke. The whining, the pacing, all the main characters are reactionary and whiny. I really tried to get through this novel. I adore the first book, and I deeply enjoyed reading the first book, and I thought that would easily translate into the next book, into the sequel, but it just does not. This story follows Maggie and her family as they enter the world of Inkheart, and it sounds amazing, like the idea of being able to live in the world of a book that you love, and it just doesn't. Is not amazing. And that's part of the problem with this, is that the first book spent all this time talking about how amazing this world was and how everybody should love to live there, and then we actually get into that world, and the main character spends all of her time whining about how she wants to go home and how she doesn't like it here, but then also in the same breath talking about how it's so beautiful and it's holding on with inky fingers to my heart, but like also I want to go home. Like it didn't translate well. And like I fully expect that you would feel that way if you'd been tossed into another world, but I don't want to read that in a story about moving into another world. I want to read a story full of wonder and love and coming into this world and being like, this is amazing, this is the best thing that's ever happened to me. And that was my expectation. So part of that was me and my expectations not being fulfilled. I think it's a very realistic portrayal of what would happen, and I didn't really want to a realistic portrayal of what would happen. So part of that is me and my expectations. But also the pacing is quite slow in this. I spent a lot of time in flashbacks in this novel. A lot of time. And it slows the narrative and the pace down so much. It's not a big action sequence book, which is okay because the first book wasn't a huge action sequence either. I was expecting that a little bit, but this novel is just so slow. Like, you get to the halfway point and nothing has really happened other than that a character has been mortally wounded and that some magic has happened. And for the halfway point, it's not a lot. Struggled with those things. I may pick this book up to finish it. Like, I got, let's see, the audiobook, I think it was about 150 pages away from the end when I was finally just like, I can't do it. I can't do it. And I was hating reading and I didn't want to pick anything up. So I switched to something else and immediately my enjoyment level soared. So unfortunately, I couldn't do it. So that is the story of what I read in the month of January. I hope you enjoyed that. All my links will be down below. If you read these books, please comment down below what your star rating was and whether you liked it or not. And I will talk to you all later.